11th pick in the draft will go to the Minnesota Timberwolves.
Wow, that means the Los Angeles Lakers have moved up. Kyle Kuzma's lucky jacket worked.
And it gives the Lakers a chance to get another asset to go after Anthony Davis in a trade.
Wow, this is going to get interesting.
The 4th pick in the 2019 NBA draft goes to the Los Angeles Lakers.
What's going on, everybody? Welcome into the Lakers Outsiders podcast. I am Gary Kester. And as you just heard, the Los Angeles Lakers are the luckiest team in NBA draft lottery history. They once again move up, this time jumping up from 11th pre-lottery all the way up to the number 4 pick, and that's where they will theoretically pick in the 2019 NBA draft. I am joined today, as always, by my man Honi Ahmadian. Honi, we got to stop doing this with the draft lottery, right? Like, it's so stressful.
It is beyond stressful. My heart is still racing. I made it home basically just in time to watch all of that unfold, and my main takeaway is that I need to find out where Kyle Kuzma got that suit from.
That was like the nicest purple jacket I think I've ever seen. Like, yeah. Shout out to Kuz.
My man was glowing up there, all sweaty in that suit, but still pulled it off. Looked great.
He did. I'll give him credit. Kyle Hartwick also joins us today. Kyle, were you sweating as bad as Kyle Kuzma was on national TV?
Well, the thing is, unfortunately, I'm no longer a Lakers fan because Jason Kidd now works for the Los Angeles Lakers. But it's really cool to see my friends prosper. You know,
why do we have you on this podcast then? This is not the Nets Outsiders. This is the Lakers Outsiders.
Listen, I'm not a Nets fan until D'Lo officially re-signs with the team. So we'll see what happens in free agency. Right now, I'm just free agent Outsiders.
Alrighty, well, all right. So this is a big day, obviously, for the Lakers. A big day for a number of teams, really, in the NBA draft lottery, especially none bigger than the New Orleans Pelicans. Let me just run through the lottery order here. The Pelicans landed the number 1 pick, which is also known as Zion Williamson. The Memphis Grizzlies moved up to number 2, and the New York Knicks were number 3. The Lakers, number 4. Cleveland Cavaliers somehow did not win the first pick for the 12th time in the last 8 years. So they moved to number 5, and the Phoenix Suns are number 6, which is just a shame because all those Suns fans that have been talking shit about the Lakers get to watch the Lakers pick in front of them on draft day.
I mean, to be fair, they would have screwed it up anyway, so I don't think it's that big of a deal.
That's true. Number 7 is going to be the Chicago Bulls. Number 8 is the Atlanta Hawks with their own pick. Number 9 is the Washington Wizards. Number 10 is the Atlanta Hawks again with the Dallas Mavericks pick. And then number 11 is the Minnesota Timberwolves, who fell into the Lakers spot as soon as the Lakers moved up. Number 12 is going to be the Charlotte Hornets. Number 13, the Miami Heat. And then the number 14 pick goes to the Boston Celtics via the Sacramento Kings. So luckily that pick didn't move up at all. So that's another big win. This is a good night. This is a really good. All right, Honi, I'm going to throw it to you first. What's your initial reaction to the Lakers? I mean, moving up and getting the 4th pick in the draft.
It's huge, you know, for a franchise that has been pretty much misstepping in everything this summer, or it's not even the summer yet, and it's been that bad. But this entire offseason, all these mistakes that they've made, and they basically just got as lucky as possible, or almost as lucky as possible, and kind of got like a rain check from the NBA and their frozen envelopes. I'm kidding. But yeah, the 4th pick, it gives the Lakers so much flexibility with what they're able to do this offseason, whether it's, you know, who knows if they're going to be able to sign a free agent, but now they have either a top rookie coming in with the 4th pick and hopefully somebody that can contribute right away, or they can use it as a package for a bigger trade, which we'll talk about definitely later. But it gives the Lakers a lot of different avenues to be able to really fix up the roster and get LeBron, that second and third star that he needs for the team to get to the playoffs and have some success.
Yeah, for sure. Kyle, are you? I feel like for me personally, when I found out that the Lakers, were moving up into the top four, and we had to suffer through what was the longest commercial break in television history, I was a little disappointed when they got fourth. But then after a little bit, I was like, okay, you know what? They moved up from 11. I can't be too mad at that. Were you disappointed at all, or are you just kind of overly excited that the Lakers moved up into the top four?
Well, I think it's interesting. You look at how they've been kind of shooting themselves in the foot the last month or so, really, and they're rewarded for it's pure chance that they got that far, but they were rewarded for incompetence lately, right?
Mhm.
Uh, Getting number four is still huge. It's the difference between I feel like obviously Zion is the number one overall pick, like that goes without saying, and he's the best player in this lottery or in the draft. But there are some guys early on in the lottery who are still really good and are better than guys who would be available at 11. So it's still a huge win for the Lakers.
Mhm.
The real issue is for the Lakers right now is deciding whether or not they want to actually use their own pick. Honi alluded to the fact that this, you know, four is much more valuable to a team than 11 is.
Yeah,
Uh,
for sure.
four is an option like Culver or Garland or maybe even Morant if he is able to slip to four, whereas 11 is like you know I don't even know. I can't. But you know what I mean, though, right?
It's a total crapshoot at that point. Like, you have no
Yeah,
idea who's gonna be on the board.
exactly. And so I, I'm happy for Lakers fans, and I guess myself still. It's hard for me to give up on the Lakers, but uh, it's going to be an interesting process moving forward. And Vogel and whatever staff he has, they're going to have to make some choices and hopefully convince the Rambuses to make those choices.
Yeah, and what's really interesting about this draft, or this draft lottery, was all the movement, right? And this was the first year with the reformed lottery format. And when you look at the top four, the Pelicans moved up 6 spots to one, Memphis moved up 6 spots to two, New York dropped 2 spots down to three, and the Lakers jumped 7 spots. They were the biggest movers, all the way up to four. And then the next five after that, the Cavs, Suns, Bulls, Hawks, and Wizards all dropped 3 spots apiece. And then you had the Mavs pick fall 1 spot, which goes to Atlanta. And then the Timberwolves, like I mentioned earlier, fell 1 spot. And another thing that's really interesting is there were three teams that were 33 and 49, and two of them made up the top two.
Mhm.
Right, the Pelicans and the Grizzlies were both 33 and 49. The Mavs were also 33 and 49 and fell 1 spot to 10. And their pick was top 5 protected, so that would have been huge for them to get, one of those 2 picks, but they fall to 10. Hani, do you think, before we dive into all the or potential options for the Lakers at 4 and some trade talk later on, but do you think this new lottery format is gonna really combat teams from tanking?
To be honest with you, no, not really. I think we saw a team like the Pelicans basically get rewarded for tanking this year, especially towards the end of the season when they weren't playing Anthony Davis either at all or during second halves or whatever they did. And their record dropped far enough for them to be able to get the number one overall pick. And it's also created better odds for teams closer to the playoffs where I think it's rare to see it happen, but I do think it's possible to make the case that some teams, it might be more worthwhile for them to tank out of the playoffs, and get odds for getting into the top four. Which, in a sense, the Clippers really did that. They just ended up being really good even after they traded their best player. Most people expected them to drop out of the playoffs and
Mhm.
be in contention for a top four pick. So right now I'm obviously very happy with all the changes to the lottery odds and all that because of how it worked out for the Lakers. But I don't think it really fixed what the NBA thought it was going to fix.
Yeah, and it's interesting because, I mean, there's always gonna be guarantees that that teams, I mean, the Knicks came in knowing that they were going to have a top 5 pick.
Yeah.
Obviously, this draft has one grand prize at the top, and then there's this pretty steep drop off after that. But there are going to be good players available. So, yeah, I mean, I really think the only way you could fully take away tanking is probably have even odds 1 through 14, and basically say we're just going to draw randomly for all the picks, right? Not just like the top 4.
Yeah.
If a team's guaranteed a top 5 pick by getting the worst record, I mean, that's kind of incentive enough to try and do that if you know you're not going to be competing or near the playoffs or anything like that. So, all right, let's dive into the possible options for the Lakers with the number 4 pick. Kyle, I'm going to throw it to you first. The consensus here is obviously Zion is going to go number 1, and if he doesn't, then David Griffin is not nearly as smart as we all thought he was. The Grizzlies and the Knicks, you would think, are going to go Ja Morant and RJ Barrett, I would assume, in some order. Those seem to be the consensus top 3 picks. If that's how it goes on draft night and the Lakers are not trading their pick, who has really got you excited? Like, who is somebody that you would really want the Lakers to pick at number 4?
Really, with the Lakers at number 4, there are quite a few, essentially probably tier 3 options in the draft, which is crazy to think that tier 3 guys are at pick 4. You know what I'm
Yeah.
saying? Like, very clearly, tier 1 is Zion Williamson, who will be going to the New Orleans Pelicans unless they just do some very weird stuff.
I hope they do. Oh, I hope they do.
Tier 2 would be Ja Morant and RJ Barrett in whatever order that happens. That's a preference choice for the Grizzlies to make when they get there. So we reach these tier 3 guys, and I think a lot of these guys are really even, but a lot of them have some glaring issues.
Mhm.
This isn't like the draft class from last year where it was pretty deep going into this pick, or also not the D'Angelo Russell. There was a draft class recently where it was really deep going into like picks 7, 8, 9, 10. This is not those draft classes. So for me, it's coming down to Darius Garland and Jarrett Culver. And I think that's what it's coming down to for a lot of people. And for that, you have to just kind of make a decision as to where you want to take the team. Because they're very different players. Culver is a great defender who struggled from 3, but he kind of performed at a high level all year and was in the national championship game. Whereas Darius Garland, great 3-point shooter, not a good defender. He's able to play off ball so Lonzo can hold the ball a lot more on offense, or LeBron or whoever. But he played in 5 games this past season,
Right.
all non-conference, and he had two of the games. One he was injured in, but 2 of the games he had less than 3 points or less. I think Garland's maybe biggest plus for the Lakers is that he is signed with Clutch. But I also think I would maybe prefer him. You know, you have that smaller sample size there, but he is kind of fitting the offense a little bit more, even though he's a poor defender. But you look at who his running mate in the front court or backcourt would be, in Lonzo, who is a good defender, controls the ball a little bit more, but isn't that elite on offense. So really, like I said, it comes down to how the Lakers want to take the season next year.
Yeah, and it'll be interesting to see if they value winning right away with, if they keep the pick, if they look for more of a guy that's more ready to contribute day one as opposed to possibly a long-term project. Yeah, and the thing with Garland, I think there's a ton of intrigue there. There's reason to be very optimistic about his potential in the NBA. Like you said, Kyle, he really only played 4 games this year. I mean, he got hurt in the 5th one, and it was 2 minutes in. So really only a 4-game sample size to go off of, and then all of his high school tape, which is, you kind of take a lot of that with a grain of salt, right? Just because of the level of competition and things like that. But he played. I mean, he played exceptionally well in those 4 games for what that's worth.
Mhm.
24 points, 19 points. Did have the 3-point game against Alcorn State in 28 minutes. Only took 6 shot attempts for whatever reason, but and then he had 33 points against Liberty. The one, I guess, main game for him was or was against USC.
The
Mark is at
24-point game, yeah. Yeah.
right. Yeah, so really, really interesting prospects. I think just for all these prospects, I just want to kind of preface this by saying that I haven't dove very deep into film on prospects yet because I kind of wanted to wait and see where the Lakers were picking. Because if they would have gotten the number 1 pick, I obviously didn't need to watch other prospects that much. But it's it's going to be interesting because I feel like from 4, say that those 3 go in that order: Williamson, Morant, and Barrett. Basically, like, there's probably 5 or 6 guys I think that you have to at least consider at this pick. I think you've got to consider Jarrett Culver. I think you have to consider DeAndre Hunter, Cam Reddish, Darius Garland, Jackson Hayes, Kobe White, and Brandon Clark. I would say those guys to me are guys you have to consider because I think they would at least be able to fit in pretty well. And I think some of those guys have very high upside. And personally, I'm a pretty big fan of Culver. I know he didn't shoot the ball well from 3, but I believe in kind of his stroke. He's got a very natural shooting stroke. His mechanics are very clean, shoots the ball on balance, and I was kind of impressed with his pick and roll reads. I was kind of surprised by those. But I think, and I mentioned this on the last pod too, that Culver's a guy that I think it's gonna be pretty dependent on what team he goes to, because I think he would fit in much better on a team like the Lakers where they've got playmakers and they've got, you know, players that he can play off of basically. And it would be a lot more different for him than going to the Knicks that, are just really a couple of young guys right now and don't have a ton. They don't have a LeBron James to play off of, that makes everybody's life easier. So there's a handful of guys that need to be considered, and Garland is going to be a very popular name, I think, because his skill set next to Lonzo Ball would be very interesting, because I think his weaknesses are kind of some of Lonzo's strengths and vice versa. So it's going to be very, very interesting to watch because it could go a number of ways, and I'm gonna basically start diving into the film tonight and tomorrow, and kind of taking a look at these prospects, and I'll kind of go from there. So I don't want to go too deep into it. I know I'm kind of rambling here, but uh, there's some good options there for sure, based on what I've seen so far. So it should be fun. It should be
Yeah,
fun.
you mentioned like Hunter and Hayes. Those are guys that the Lakers should also consider as well. Hayes is fit might be a little less clear for the Lakers, I guess,
Mhm.
because you have like Kuzma and LeBron and a decent contingent of forwards on the team that he would
Mhm.
be struggling to find playing time with. But he's a very intriguing prospect. I find him more so probably going to like a team like maybe the Bulls. The Cavs might jump on him at 5, but I could see him slipping all the way to like the Wizards. Um, it, a lot of teams are going to be making decisions over the course of the next couple weeks when they get these guys in the door and see how they work out. Talk to them a lot, but I think Culver and Garland should probably be considered the top guys for the Lakers based on the roster core that we have right now.
Yeah, yeah, and I don't even think Morant and Barrett are locks to go 2 and 3. I mean, I would think Morant is pretty close to being a lock, to at least being a top 3 pick. If the Grizzlies don't take him, I saw somebody say that because they have Conley, even though I think if you get Morant and you play him either next to Conley or behind Conley and let Conley mentor him, that's probably a pretty good thing for him. So I would be surprised if Morant is on the board when the Lakers are up, but I wouldn't be
Yeah,
overly surprised if Barrett is there. Um, this draft really after 1 gets very not super unpredictable at 2 and 3, but after 3, especially, can go a lot of different ways. So
And one quick footnote too is like the Lakers front office has been pretty chaotic lately, but the scouting department remains very very good. Especially the deeper you go into the draft, the more able they are to find steals.
right.
So I'm going to trust in them. However, the Grizzlies and Knicks front offices have been chaotic for a lot longer than the Lakers have been. So even if it may seem like, Morant and Barrett are the two guys there and the guys that they would likely go with, I think it's almost, it's too unpredictable there for us to really say that those are the guys that they are going to take.
Yeah. Yeah, and another thing to watch too will be how many picks in the second round could be sold.
Hmm.
The Lakers in the past have bought picks. They bought the pick that was Jordan Clarkson. I believe that was the 2014 draft with the 46th pick. And kind of looking at the full draft order, because the Lakers currently constructed only have the fourth pick. After that, their night would be done. Unless they try and get back into the action via trade or they buy a pick. And I'm looking at kind of second round picks right now, and the 76ers have 4 second round picks. One is they've got 33, 34, 42, and 54. So, there are a couple teams there with multiple second round picks that might be willing to sell them. The Kings have 3 as well, as I can see. So yeah, another thing to watch. But all right, so let's talk. We'll have a lot more draft coverage, obviously, leading up to the draft. Now that we know where the Lakers pick, it's a pretty big deal that they moved up to number 4 because they pretty much have, like you said, Kyle, their pick of the first or their first pick of the tier 3 guys, as having that 4th pick. So, all right, Honi, we've kept you in the dark long enough. I'm going to throw it back over to you. What is the significance of this draft order with the Pelicans getting the number 1 pick, the Knicks falling to 3, the Lakers moving up to 4? What's the significance of all that in terms of the Anthony Davis trade talks? I mean, could you see a scenario where the Pelicans think they can convince Anthony Davis to stay because they have Zion Williamson now, or do you think this makes it more likely that he gets dealt to a team like the Lakers or the Knicks?
From that perspective of whether they're going to trade him or not, I don't think that changes much. David Griffin, who recently got their front office job and is leading that charge now, has talked about wanting to try and convince AD to stay, but he's also been very adamant that we need an answer from him, and if he says no, then we're going to move on and trade him. And
I'm also trying to convince Kate Beckinsale to marry me, but it's not going very well.
I believe in you. Pete Davidson's got nothing on you. Now, that being said, the immediate report after this draft or this lottery was that Anthony Davis's position hasn't changed and he wants to be traded. I think the most significant, effect of the lottery on those talks, though, is that to me, whoever ended up with the number 1 overall pick was going to have the best package to get Anthony Davis. I thought Zion was basically the best asset that the Pelicans could get for him. And now that they are getting Zion with the first overall pick, that kind of puts everything into, shambles again, where it's not really clear what they're going to prioritize in terms of what they get, or who has the best package. Because now you still have the Knicks with a top pick and a few assets, and they're going to be pushing really hard to get Anthony Davis, one would assume, given their belief that they're going to sign Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving, or 2 free agents this year. The Lakers seem to still be interested in that idea as well, and whether they sign another player, another free agent or not, they seem pretty intent on at least opening up those trade talks. And seeing if they can get Anthony Davis. And then the Celtics are still, kind of in the periphery of, who knows if they would want to still go after Anthony Davis without any indication that Kyrie is going to stay there. But they still have, a ton of draft picks, although, not moving up this year hurts them a little bit, but they do have draft picks moving forward, and they have young assets. And, Jason Tatum had a pretty substandard year given how good he was his rookie year, but he still might be the best overall, like, one singular asset that the Pelicans could realistically get for AD right now. So I think those three teams are the ones that I would look at first and foremost as guys that can get Anthony Davis. But as we've seen with, the Raptors getting Kawhi, or the Thunder getting Paul George, there's always just a random team that comes out of nowhere and surprises everybody. So I'm just more looking forward to seeing which of these teams are going to push hard to get Anthony Davis, and seeing what the Pelicans are going to prioritize in terms of what they want to get for him.
Yeah, this lottery really kind of shook things up, I think, on the Anthony Davis trade front, and I'm really excited to see. I'm really excited for draft night now, not only because the Lakers have the 4th pick, but because, another thing too on the Anthony Davis trade front is when these picks are made, they kind of lose their value, right? Because the Pelicans, if they're getting picks for Anthony Davis in this draft, they'd obviously want them beforehand because they want to make the picks themselves. Although, that stuff can get worked out kind of behind the scenes. They can say, hey, if you draft this guy, we'll make that deal or whatever. But usually, picks kind of lose their value in trade talks like that when they've already been made, because they might pick somebody that the Pelicans don't want. So, Kyle, outside of those, I guess outside of the Knicks, the Lakers, and the Celtics, do you really see anybody else kind of getting into the Anthony Davis sweepstakes? And how are you feeling about it? Who do you think is kind of the biggest threat, and where do the Lakers sit and all that?
Real quickly, I do want to make a note about the Celtics, because it was kind of viewed that they were a loser tonight just because they didn't move up, and a bunch of teams did.
They're always
But
losers, Kyle.
but the biggest note with the Celtics is that they have their own pick this year. They have the Clippers pick, and they have the Kings pick. But
14,
more
20, and 22.
more importantly, they did not get the Grizzlies pick this year, which means that it's top 6 protected next year and unprotected in 2021. Top 6 protected next year, the Grizzlies probably would still keep it. I would assume they've haven't really shown me anything to say that they're going to be outside of the top 6 next year.
Yeah, they're
And
still definitely rebuilding. So
if it does become unprotected in 2021, that is projected to be the first year that high school athletes will be able to declare for the NBA draft and skip college entirely. A pick like an unprotected pick like that is an incredibly valuable asset, as we've seen with. I don't even know who. I think the Clippers still have that Miami Heat pick that's unprotected in 2021. That's going to be incredibly valuable as well. So the Clippers would maybe be the other team that I could consider. They have a lot of young players that they could offer up. They don't have a specific one young player right now that is going to be, like a Jason Tatum, but they have a ton of draft capital and can really kind of shake things up in the Anthony Davis talks. But I would look at the Celtics and the Clippers as probably the top 2 guys, or top 2 teams, to be able to get Anthony Davis.
yeah, and then another thing with the Clippers too. They obviously have that LA market, and you can't really count out Jerry West.
Yeah.
Like, he's just kind of a magician when it comes to things like that. And he's it was just announced before we started recording this that he is going to stay with the Clippers. They extended his contract or renewed his contract, whatever. But he'll still be with the Clippers, which is a bummer because I've been really wanting him to come back to the Lakers and help out. But that was a pipe dream. So, but yeah, like I said, this lottery, I think it was a big win for the Lakers, really, because for the reasons that we've said, the Pelicans have the number 1 pick now, so they can't get that in a trade from somebody else and send Anthony Davis out. The Knicks fall to number 3. So, and I just don't think the Knicks have enough to get a deal done. I feel like if they did, the Pelicans would be taking far less than what the Lakers offered
Yeah.
back at the deadline. And I
Yeah.
don't know if that a similar package is still going to be on the table, but it'll, I think teams are going to some teams might wait until free agency. Like the Lakers and the Nets and the Knicks, I mean, might all wait for free agency because they have so much, they have max cap space, and the Nets and the Knicks can, have enough space to go after two guys, right? So the dynamic of having the draft before free agency, and just the picks losing value once they've been made and all that stuff is really going to factor in here, and then that's going to be fun. That's going to be a lot of fun to watch because there are a ton of different ways that can go. And I feel like the Lakers are more likely to trade for Anthony Davis now, not only because they got the fourth pick, but because David Griffin is running the show there. And obviously their ownership has to sign off on it. And they were pretty, anybody but the Lakers at the trade deadline. And, the Lakers don't have Magic Johnson there kind of orchestrating things anymore. So it would be, I'd want to know who is operating on the Lakers side of that, whether it's Kurt Rambis, Linda Rambis, Jeannie Buss, Rob Pelinka, one of the other Buss kids. I don't know.
I don't think the Lakers know.
They're gonna let LeBron do it, and they're just gonna trade the whole team.
Bring back Chaz.
They're gonna play 2-on-5, LeBron and Anthony Davis. But
I would take
yeah,
that over most teams, to be honest.
right? And I'll even sign for the veteran minimum. I mean, I'm not an NBA veteran, but I'll sign for the minimum. I'll just go out there and just pass the ball. I won't even shoot.
I think you deserve a mid-level exception at least, I think.
Wow, you're going to be my agent because you're already overvaluing me.
No, you got to sign with Clutch. That's how you get on the team. That's how you get it done.
I'm working on it, but apparently Clutch wants good clients. Yeah, so that whole dynamic just kind of amplified with this draft lottery, not only with the Lakers, but a couple of those other teams with the Celtics and the Knicks and so on and so forth. I was looking at the Thunder, but I'm pretty sure the Thunder cannot trade any first round picks because they've traded so many. They can't trade any for a while because of the Ted Stepien rule. And maybe, I don't know, maybe Houston tries to get in on it somehow, but those teams that are contending have kind of shoddy pick situations because Houston doesn't have their first round pick this year either. So we're going to see I think a lot of news and rumors on that really start to heat up come draft time. So, alrighty. So obviously the Lakers can trade the number 4 pick and pieces for Anthony Davis, or they can trade it for some other players. Who knows who's out there? And as we've all seen, things change very quickly in the NBA. You never know who's going to become available. I remember I always use Kawhi Leonard as the example. I thought he was going to be a Spur for life. It seemed like he was happy there. He was a perfect fit because he says less than 3 words every day. and he was just a perfect fit for what the Spurs do. And then in the blink of an eye, he was never going to play there again. So who wants to go first? We talked about this, and we have not revealed some hypothetical trade targets to one another. So the surprise factor is going to be there. Who wants to go first?
Well, how about, because I have several written down. I think all of you do. If we're doing rapid fire, we might as well do them all, just kind of briefly. So I'll go first.
Snake draft style. Go.
The first guy I have written down, I think becomes a little bit more available dependent on what that specific team is looking to do, is Jrue Holiday. If the Lakers somehow are not able to get Anthony Davis, let's say he gets traded to the Celtics for all of the draft capital that I had talked about earlier, and the Lakers are able to trade number 4 for Jrue Holiday, that puts the Pelicans in a pretty good situation where they have number 1, number 4, number 14, number 20, number 22, and a bunch of future picks. And the Celtics may not even have to trade Jason Tatum, but if the Pelicans really want it, they could get him. And then they're in a pretty good spot all of a sudden where they have all of these good young players. But more importantly, the Lakers would get Jrue Holiday, a guy that they could fit right into the roster. Depending on what kind of young core they would lose in the trade, I don't know if 4 for Holiday would work straight up, but that would be one that would be really interesting.
Honi, I'll let you have the number 2 pick.
Okay. All right. So I'll start with the one that's kind of been rumored before, and somebody who again might be available, but their team hasn't really given an indication that he is. But Bradley Beal, to me, might be the best player other than Anthony Davis that they could realistically get. Again, I think the Lakers would definitely need to add more to that deal other than the number 4 overall pick. But he's the guy who really, he's been great, but this year with John Wall getting hurt and the Wizards being as bad as they were, Bradley Beal really came into his own as like a legitimate superstar. He's not really just a shooter anymore. He can run an offense. So I think Bradley Beal is somebody who, again, we talked about. Yeah, Kyle talked about fit with Jrue Holiday. I think he's a perfect fit next to LeBron. As somebody who can run off screens, but also handle the ball as well.
And yeah, his shooting would be greatly
Yes.
cherished with this Lakers team, especially making free throws. That'd be great. Beal is the guy that makes the most sense to me for the reasons that Honi laid out. I think he's a terrific fit next to LeBron James. But it's gonna. I think the thing with this too that's tricky is the Lakers are probably, if the pick isn't dealt for Anthony Davis, it's probably not going to get dealt until into free agency at some point. So Beal makes the most sense to me. We should trade the pick for D'Angelo. No, I'm just kidding.
Please
bring D'Angelo back. No, that'll never happen. But so basically, all the names that I think are actually realistic and or worth the 4th pick in terms of, because you obviously have to factor in salary, years left on the contract, age, all that stuff. Like for me, it's a very short list. I like both your guys' picks. I think Holiday becomes very interesting, especially if Davis is traded elsewhere and the Pelicans really want to blow it up and rebuild with young players. Beal makes the most sense to me. Another name I just wrote down. I wrote down 2 more names, and for people listening to this, don't jump all over me. Don't jump in my mentions on Twitter. These are just like hypotheticals. Not that I'm suggesting these are realistic or even trades that I really want, but trades that have some sort of realistic, I don't know,
chance. Yeah.
Mike Conley is a guy I wrote down, and the issue with Conley, and I've always been a big fan of Conley. I really like his game, and I think he could be great for a guy like Lonzo. Plus, I think he's still a pretty good player. His contract is pretty outrageous. It's north of $30 million a year. It's $32.5 million next year, and then $34.5 the year after that. And I'm assuming he's not going to terminate that last year of his contract and enter free agency early. Leaving $34 million on the table doesn't seem smart. So in that aspect of it, the Lakers would have to basically absorb him into cap space because I don't think they would be able to put together the salaries to match that. So not realistic, but like a guy that you will probably see. We've already seen him in trade talks and rumors. So, and everybody that's in trade talks gets linked to the Lakers at some point. So, I know we said snake draft. So does that mean I have to do another one?
Yeah, go for it.
Yeah.
All right. I only wrote down one other name, and it's probably because the other 2 of the big 3 on this team are probably untouchable in the eyes of Sam Presti. I wrote down Steven Adams.
Damn you.
Because the Thunder are just in a weird spot as well, where it seems like they're kind of capped out, right? They're back-to-back years where they've had first-round exits, and there doesn't seem to be a very clear path for them to improve that roster. Russell Westbrook has 3 years left guaranteed on his deal, plus a player option in 2022 for the 2022-2023 season worth $47 million. I don't think he's going to pass that up. Paul George has at least 2 more years left on his contract, and then he has a $37 million player option the year after that. So Steven Adams is a guy that I think could be very helpful because the Lakers, I mean, JaVale McGee did a really nice job, and Ivica Zubac did a great job when he was here. Chandler was good for a very brief stint until injuries caught up to him, and he's obviously up there in age. I think he would fit in pretty well, defensively on the glass and just kind of adding that enforcer presence in the middle, and would help out this team. But I mean, I don't think that trade is very realistic. I don't even know if Adams is worth the number four pick, because again, he has a pretty big salary as well. Makes $25 million next year, $27 million the year after. So the Lakers would really struggle to match salary, and I mean that would basically, I think, be a pretty big fallback option if they whiff in free agency. So, Honi, I'll throw it to you for your next one.
Let me just ask Kyle, how many more do you have?
Dose.
All right, I'm just gonna do. I also have 2, but I don't feel very strongly about one of them, so I'm just gonna do both of them.
Okay.
The one I don't feel quite as strongly about is Goran Dragic. Like Steven Adams, I'm not sure if the number 4 overall pick is the right value for him. But he's another older vet that would fit in really well with or without Lonzo on the roster. He can shoot it pretty well. He can run an offense. He's a pretty decent defender when he tries. So I think he would be a nice fit. The other person who I think is a really nice fit and what might be my favorite conjured up idea at the moment is Miles Turner. I think the Pacers are in a position where they may want to choose between Turner and Sabonis, both of whom are really, really good centers. And, to me, I think Turner is the better player, but Sabonis is still on his rookie contract while Turner's extension kicks in next year. But he's only being paid about $17.5 million next season. And for a guy who was very much in the running for Defensive Player of the Year, I think that's kind of a steal.
Yeah.
And offensively, he also fits in that he can stretch the floor a little bit. He can, attack the glass, finish up lobs that he would get from, again, Lonzo, LeBron, and the sort. I think the center position going into free agency, outside of just getting talent, positionally, I think the center position is what the Lakers need the most, like you mentioned with Steven Adams. And I think Turner not only fits the timeline of playing with LeBron and maximizing your talent now, but he's also young enough that, if and when this doesn't work out or when LeBron retires or whatever, he can still grow with the rest of the young core if they're still here.
Yeah, absolutely. I did not expect that name, but I was looking at his contract situation and everything, and that'd be pretty sweet. That'd be pretty sweet. But who knows just how willing Indiana would be to part ways with him. So
we are not tampering doing this, Pacers, just so you know. We're not affiliated with the Lakers.
We are called Lakers outsiders. We're outside of the Lakers. Although I am a distant cousin to Linda Rambus. No, I'm kidding.
we can always just quit our jobs to go tweet about these trades, and then it's legal. So
Yeah.
I mean, according to people in our mentions, I get paid a lot of money for doing that. So I don't know about. I could quit my job for it, I guess.
Legal tamperer. All right, Kyle, throwing it over to you to finish this thing off.
All right, so like Honi, both I don't think either of my names are too realistic. One on the other team's end and one on the Lakers' end. First name that isn't super realistic for us to acquire from that team would be Aaron Gordon. He is on a relatively friendly contract still. It was one of the contracts, I think it was in the year that we signed Mozgov and Dane, and it was a similar number to that, but that becomes more friendly as time passes, and he's obviously a better player than Dane and Mozgov are right now. So that would be an interesting name. I don't think the Magic would end up doing that for the number 4 overall pick, but they are the Orlando Magic and have given up on players way too soon in the past, like Victor Oladipo and Tobias Harris. So that would be interesting.
And another thing with Gordon's contract, you don't see this very often, I think, with players, but it's front loaded.
Yeah.
So not only does the cap go up over the years, but his number goes down. So that last year's 16.4 million, and pretty much right where I think he's going to be entering his or hitting his prime. So I mean, that could be, yeah. I mean, that's a good point. I think that could be kind of a steal of a deal if if he pans out.
Another player, it's actually from the Orlando Magic as well, but I don't think he's probably worth the number 4 overall pick. He had a down year. Evan, never Google Fournier.
That's really interesting.
I think he's making 12 and 13 million dollars in the next 2 years. I closed out of the tab though, unfortunately. He had
He's at 17 million both of the next 2 years,
little.
except the second one is a player option.
Okay.
Yeah.
He had a down year this past year. He wasn't shooting as efficiently as he normally does. But the Magic still made the playoffs, and again, that they might give up on him, especially if the number 4 overall pick is dangled in front of them. But I feel like the Lakers would see the plus of the number 4 overall pick outweigh Fournier at this particular moment in his career. But he still is only 26, so it could be interesting.
Yeah, I actually really like that one, to be honest with you. I think Fournier is another like really nice fit and gives them a lot of things that they need next to LeBron.
Yeah.
Looking at the Magic roster, all I can think is it's such a shame that Markelle Fultz has fallen as far as he has with his injury and just kind of probably the mental issues, I think, that have stemmed from that. Because, a couple years ago, 2 years ago, basically, like with the 4th pick, you would have absolutely, dealt it for Markelle Fultz and trusted in that upside. And I guess since I brought his name up, the Lakers did just hire Judy Sato. I think it's Sato. And she's obviously popular for working with Kobe back in the day for a number of years, but especially with his recovery from the torn Achilles. But she's also been working with Markelle Fultz here recently. Not that that would mean anything, I guess, but since I brought Fultz's name up, I guess I should throw that in there. But the context of all these trade ideas, before anybody that listens to this is just losing their minds and thinking that we're trying to trade the pick for half the league, this is probably predicated on the Lakers whiffing in free agency, right? Like if they sign a Kawhi Leonard or a Kyrie Irving or whoever, they'll probably go all in for Anthony Davis at that point. I don't think that they would go all in for, some of the guys that we mentioned. And like we said, the dynamic behind that is once the 4th pick is made, if it's made by the Lakers, the value could dip with that pick. I mean, it could go up. A team could like the player that the Lakers picked. It's just a lot of what ifs. It's just a lot of what ifs, and we thought it'd be fun to kind of play this game of looking at some possible trade options. Even though I think most of the names we mentioned are very, very unexpected to be traded to the Lakers, especially for the 4th pick. So, but no, this was fun. It was fun to kind of take a look out there. The thing with that is I think a lot of the guys that we would want become free agents this summer, right? Like Kawhi Leonard, Jimmy Butler, Kyrie Irving. Not that you could get those guys with the number 4 or for the number 4 pick necessarily. But there's a lot of good players that are going to be unrestricted free agents this year. So July 1st cannot get here fast enough, man. I really
gotta get through the draft first.
I know. The next 2 months are going to be, they're going to take forever, but man, it's going to be crazy. It's going to be fun times for NBA fans in general. So, alrighty. You guys have anything else before we sign off?
Keep an eye on the site. We'll have a round table coming up with a bunch of draft ideas. I think you guys will be on it. I don't remember who the other two people were, but we'll have that, and then we have a bunch of draft profiles that'll be coming out before the draft. Gary and I will be working pretty hard on some of those. We have some guest writers, as well as I think Dylan has one. So we'll be focusing on a lot of the top guys, and then just anytime there's a rumor about a guy working out with the Lakers, we got you covered. So
I will not be working hard on that, in case you didn't get it from what Kyle said. Just so everybody's aware.
If there are any rumors that the Lakers like any Nevada players, Honi will be all over it.
The minute they work one of them out, I'm writing a 3,000 word column on why Cody Martin is the key to get to the Lakers getting to the promised land.
And Colton can edit that. So
I was gonna say I will not retweet that article. Alrighty, well, that is going to do it for us this time. Exciting. It's so weird. The Lakers, it's just they've been kind of like a wreck here lately, right? With everything that's gone on, and just seem to be stumbling all over the place. And then, hey, they get the 4th pick, moving all the way up from 11th pre-lottery. So exciting time for the Lakers, and hopefully good things come of this, and they can figure out the right move and get it done. So. Kyle, Honi, I thank you guys very much for joining me. I know it's been kind of I'm a little drained from that lottery because your emotions go kind of up and down, but this was a fun day. As always, if you enjoy the Lakers Outsiders podcast, you can subscribe to us on iTunes, on YouTube, and on Podbean. And if you like the podcast, go ahead and leave us a review in iTunes. And if you have any questions that you would like us to answer on the podcast, now's a good time to do it. With the draft coming up, free agency, all the trade talk, bound to come up with Anthony Davis or maybe some of the other names that we mentioned. Who knows? There's going to be a lot of rumors and stuff flying out there. So if you have a question about any of that you want guaranteed to be answered on the show, leave it for us in an iTunes review. If you do that, and like I've mentioned before on previous pods, that really helps us out. So we will definitely get to your question and leave that in an iTunes review, and we'll definitely get around to it. You can also follow us on Twitter at Lakers Outsiders and like us on Facebook as well. Alrighty, that's going to do it for us this time. Thank you so much for listening. Until next time, for Kyle and Honi, this is Gary Kester signing off.
Shout out Jordan Clarkson.